campaigned for President Trump and with him during the 2020 election. Is it fair to say that you wanted Donald Trump to win a second term in office? Please.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Did you tell the president in that second call that you supported him, that you voted for him, but that you were not going to do anything illegal for him?
I did, sir.
I'm disappointed. I'm a conservative Republican. I wanted President Trump to win. But if you don't have the votes, you don't have the votes. Now, if he's got votes in some other states, then he can go bark up those trees. But in Georgia, we run a pretty tight ship.
Hi again, everyone. It's 5 o'clock in the East. So the beauty of American democracy is that, right? People have a choice. They can support whoever they want. They can vote for whomever they want. Voters head to the polls. They pick who they want to represent them. And for the most part, right, when we're working, right, the individual with the most votes wins. What that means is that there are also a large number of people displeased with the result, those whose choice did not prevail, but they accept it. They understand that loss is a risk in the American experiment. And so they focus on what they can do to make sure their choice is the one who wins in the next election. But that acceptance isn't what happened in the last presidential election. Millions of Americans, fueled by the lies propagated by the candidate who actually lost, falsely believes that their votes had somehow, somewhere been stolen. A mob of supporters of Donald Trump's angrily stormed the U.S. Capitol, attempting to take back what they falsely and erroneously, in many instances criminally, believed had been taken over from them. Now, more than 2.5 years later, more than 1,000 of those individuals have been charged with crimes that they committed on that day. And finally, the man behind the lies has been criminally charged by the federal government and the state of Georgia as well. 2 separate indictments from Special Counsel Jack Smith and Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis that came down 13 days apart. When the indictment from Fulton County was released, a member of the January 6th Select Committee, Congressman Adam Schiff, posted this, quote, "So why does yet another indictment matter? Trump attempted to stay in power after losing re-election. That has never happened before in our history. If he is allowed to escape accountability for that, other presidents will attempt to do the same. Voters need to know that their vote matters, and elected officials need to know that they are not above the law. We cannot allow a president to seek to subvert an election, and if they succeed, they are president for life. And if they fail, there's no consequence. That is one sure way to lose our democracy. Which brings us back to a word we speak of on this program every single day, accountability. How without accountability, our democracy will not survive. Trump is trying to avoid accountability, still spreading his lies, still denying his loss. And just last night, his lawyers asked the judge overseeing the federal election case to push Trump's trial back to April of 2026. When the judge ultimately decides to schedule the trial, we will see what happens. And we'll see whether or not a jury of his peers convicts him. That's all unclear at this point. But these multiple indictments against the ex-president have already been a massive step toward accountability. But accountability is where we begin the hour with our friend, Officer Harry Dunn. He's the author of the upcoming book, Standing My Ground, A Capitol Police Officer's Fight for Accountability and Good Trouble After January 6th. I know we made a date to be in studio together, but I didn't want to wait another week till I was back to talk to you. So thank you for being here like this.
Always good to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
I know there's this expectation that you'll be like, yeah, accountability, but I feel like you know better than anybody that this is the beginning of a new beginning of the process, right? That what real accountability looks like in the best case scenario is still a long horizon away. How does it feel just to be at the beginning of the next phase of this?
You know, that's a good question, because I asked myself, like, all right, now what? You know, he's been indicted in all these different states and jurisdictions, and now it's just like, now what? Now what do we do? Now what? Do we just wait? And if he has his way, it'll be till 2026. Like, Lord forbid that happens. But, you know, what do we do? Just sit here and just deal with the trauma, be re-traumatized, hearing all the... Actually, let me back up. Let's talk about the people that are defending him, because those are the things that are, those people are looking to minimize the things that we went through Michael Fanone uses this line often, you know, I went to hell and back only for people to tell me that hell doesn't exist. So all these different defenses that people are going to use and people are going to be throwing at the wall to get them to stick, we're just going to have to live with that. It's kind of like gaslighting us that what we went through didn't really happen.
I don't like that we have to accept that, and I try to never do that here. I mean, I also feel
we don't.
Right? We don't have to accept that, and that's playing on their terrain. I mean, I think the way you do, that the criminal justice system kind of springing to life and engaging is an affirmation for reality on Earth One. It's an affirmation that the physical violence and the ongoing trauma that you experienced are real, which nobody on Earth One doubts, but you're contending with this alternate reality. And I feel like every time there's any attempt to defend what Trump did on that day or to call them ordinary tourists, it is an affront to all of you.
Well, yeah, that's what. But you got to think that's the game plan of what he did, what his supporters are doing. They're doing anything they can do to diminish the. Is there a chance? Is there any credibility to what these individuals are saying, to what they went through? I mean, look at the reason why people thought the vote was stolen, because these state legislatures are doing everything in their power within the law to suppress the vote of people. So if they're saying that, you know, people aren't voting, and there's no way that these lies are able to, you know, to grow into they spread like wildfire. And that's how we get what we got on January 6th.
You know, you deal with sort of the whole petri dish, right? and the lie with the anger, with the racism is how January 6th happens, right? But you put the lie in a petri dish with your faith and your story and your truth, and it sort of shrivels up and dies. How are we doing, you know, as a country? Do you feel like the petri dish with the lie and the hate and the racism is growing more quickly than the petri dish with the lie and the criminal accountability and the truth tellers like yourself?
Well, you know, that's where I'll give myself a pat on the back for that. Not so much the January 6th stuff, what he did on that day, me and my coworkers and the men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department, but not shutting up since then, refusing to, like you just said, let the truth in my face die. Like, I'm not going anywhere. Like, as long as people are pushing back, then they're going to find resistance in myself, refusing to shut up about what happened that day until, like you said, justice and accountability has happened, which now they are trying to delay. If I was, you know, had the opportunity to clear my name in court, then you best believe I'd be on the first available date. Let's make this happen, you know?
That's so interesting. Like, none of his defenses are about defending himself on the facts. They're all about some political smear or political fabrication.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's the thing. Like, we know that it was a lie. Like, the reason why I'm so confident in saying that, you know, Donald Trump is responsible for what happened that day is because the individuals who attacked us, not just us as in the law enforcement, but the American people, because that's what that building represents. The U.S. Capitol represents the American people. So when I say they attacked us, they attacked all of America. But the reason why I feel so confident saying that is because they told us with their own words. The reason they were there is because Donald Trump sent them there. And you know, if he had some other facts or other truths, he should get the opportunity to say them. Instead of just, like you just said, spewing all these different theories about, you know, election interference and all this stuff.
You know, you had an interesting reaction. You credited Cassidy Hutchinson, who was a very senior advisor to Mark Meadows, a West Wing insider, but you credited her with telling the truth and telling the story of how January 6th happened. Talk about that.
You know, I can... That's just bring like the human inside of me. Like I'm angry at a lot of people from that day for the failures of, you know, a lot of people dropped the ball that day, whether it be elected officials, whether it be intelligence gatherers, whether it be the president of the United States, whatever. But when it came time to do the right thing, it came to do the right thing again, a lot of people stepped up, and Cassidy Hutchinson is one of them, especially after learning all the powerful individuals that were up against her, the people that were that she was in the room with, and she's probably the youngest person in that room, probably a lot of times the only woman in that room. And you just look at those odds that she was against. You know, I got to show a little bit of grace, and I appreciate her having the resolve to stand fast and tell her truth and tell her story. To also bring about these indictments that happen, because honestly, I'm no legal scholar like Harry and your other panel were that were just on, but I do know that I believe that. But a lot of these indictments would not have happened without her coming forward, so I'm appreciative of that.
I think that's right. And I mean, I also think about him, Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. I mean, they were for Trump until January 6th. I mean, they voted for him in November, but they said overturning an election that you have lost is not just a line too far, but then they work to shed truth on how that happened. Cassidy Hutchinson is in the same category. But I want to come, you know, to human level, and I struggle with this every time Bill Barr, who I think was one of the most damaging people to ever hold the office of Attorney General in our country's history, says something about the strength of the government's cases about Donald Trump. Of course, it's news because he was such a willing accomplice, but I struggle with the coming late to protecting democracy, coming late to calling a lie, in Bill Barr's case, coming late to calling BS BS. Where does that grace that you can show some of those people come from?
You know, the better late than never slogan or saying is the optimist way of looking at it. You know, the pessimist, I guess that's the optimistic way of looking at it. But the pessimistic way was saying you should have done it from the beginning. Right. And the realist part, I guess, is where I am. I'm mad at you for not doing it earlier, but I'm glad that you did it. And I think that's how democracy works. Like, you're allowed to have different opinions within the law. Like, oppress people as much as you want, Bill Barr, within the law. But once you cross the borderline of breaking the law, then, you know, that's when you take a stand. I guess you're legally right, but morally it's still kind of reprehensible to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I'm glad that Chris Christie is running against Donald Trump in the Republican primary by making some of the same points you and I are. But he was his debate coach through 2020. He didn't quit after good people on both sides. He didn't walk away after he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. He didn't leave after the Access Hollywood tape came out. And I'm still so mad that they didn't do something earlier. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is that the fight is bigger. It's about democracy, and we have to welcome everybody to the side of protecting her.
Yeah, like, we need all the allies you can get with this fight. I mean, look how much support Donald Trump has. You know, like, we can't discredit that just because he's doing everything illegal under the sun. We can't discredit that and just hope that that's enough to win people over. He still has a ton of support. So we need allies from all over if we want to preserve this experiment called democracy, right? We can't just take it for granted. Oh, he broke the law. No way people are going to support. Yeah, his support is growing. Like, after every indictment, they do a new poll. His numbers are up. Like, this is maddening. But it's a problem, and it exists, and we have to face it head on.